Battletech. It's about the numbers. And certainly from the perspective of a mech warrior, it's about putting that damage output, getting those high damage weapons, positioning yourself, getting lucky with the dice, bringing those modifiers down as best you can, and scoring those hits. But as a mech commander, if we step back a little bit, looking at the entirety of the hex map, looking at both your lances, looking at your support units, how do weapons influence the game? And that's what I want to approach in this Battletech Tactica vlog. It's not so much about the damage, but it's the projection of possibility. I want to framework and step back for a moment. Generally speaking, on average, unless it's a very, very specific attacker versus defender type mission, if I'm playing on two hex maps, generally speaking, I want to put my two lances in the middle. I want to advance up the middle of the hex map. This way, I've got some room to maneuver. On my way up the middle, I want to look at terrain and see where I can gain an advantage or deny you terrain, gain a disadvantage. It's about having an understanding as we move, so if things change and things adapt, I have some possibility. I've got somewhere to go. As soon as I move to a refused flank, where I move up on one side or I castle up on another side, valid tactica, it changes things. So there's this idea of influencing. There's this idea of maneuverability. Okay, we have that framework. Framework number 2, before we jump into the tactica, I like to take something with very, very long range. Autocannon 2, something that can put out some long-range missiles, a 5-pack, and have a unit. Sometimes it's some warriors, helicopters. Sometimes it's a blackjack, but something with some extreme range, where an extreme range could also be the weapon itself, but it could also be a very, very fast unit. I could have a LRM 5 or 10-pack mounted on a really, really fast hover unit, which means I'm going to move the entirety of my hover, then I'm going to stack on the range and fire out. Something that can reach out pretty much turn one of shooting into your deployment zone or start hitting targets. I like to have one or two units that can do this. So this way, we start rolling some dice. We start to see what happens. I want to start attacking you immediately and see how you react. It's like it's a projection of opportunity, a projection of what's going to go on. Do you continue advancing? Do you kind of pull back? Do you peel off a couple of units to go after my other unit? I don't have a specific tactica. I'm just looking to see what I can project and see what I can do. This idea of getting some ideas. Okay, we have that framework. Let's now jump into the weapons themselves in Battletech. And for now, we're just talking inner sphere. I want to cause damage. I need to cause damage. So I need to bring my modifiers down. I need to have some redundancy. I want to try and hit if I can focus on one area based on a torso twist or getting to one side. All of that kind of mech warrior focus. Absolutely. It's about the damage. But stepping back, what opportunities can I project? How can I use that? Matching the weapon to the target. A couple of examples. I've got a long-range missile 10-pack, 15, or 20-pack, which means if I roll average or legendary, that spread is going to be really big. If you have a mech that's relatively undamaged, you take a couple of hits, but the left torso is open to internals, or the arm is open to internals. If I target that with that long-range missile pack, that's going to cause some damage, but that's going to influence you tactically different than if you've got a fully armored up assault mech hitting there. Projection. Using an LRM pack, because of the spread on it at the long range, it might cause you to pull that mech back. It might cause you to divert something. Second example, my favorite example, big guns never tire. If I can take an autocannon 20, I'm taking an autocannon 20. This autocannon 20 running up the table, right? See on the Banshee, Irby's not really running, but right, modified Banshee's running up the table. Cyclops running up the table, and Hunchback running up the table. You're like, okay, I'm aware. It's approaching. Fire, divert, do this. But that moment, as soon as that autocannon 20 is in range, I'm at long range. You ran. I moved. We've got other modifiers. Probably not going to hit. It's only one shot. But there is a projection of if Fritz rolls legendary and he hits, that's going to blast my mech. That's 20 points. That's like a dual PPC hit to the same area. 1, 2. If I'm a medium mech, I'm in trouble. If I'm a light mech, I'm just going to shatter. And we're not even getting into mechs that have, like the Crab, dual autocannon 20s. You get that autocannon 20 up there. Yes, it's about the damage, but there's a further projection with the weapon of, look, I know the dice, the matrix, I did the math hammer. There's no way he's going to hit. But if he rolls legendary, what's going to happen? And then, of course, once you get hit, you're also calculating, well, if he hits, look, I've got an assault mech. I've got a stalker. I could take that hit. But what if it's in an area that you can't take that hit? You've taken some damage to a leg or a center torso or a left torso. It's a projection. When we look at medium lasers, right, looking at different weapons to project, going through, I think it's the Ontaros. There's a tank. As a mech commander, I should be ashamed of not having this memorized. I should have all the tech manuals 99% memorized. There's a tank that you think it's a misprint in the technical manual. It's got like 25 or 30 medium lasers. And it's just insane. It's like the energy equivalent of a short-range missile carrier. The first time you meet a short-range missile carrier at point blank, you're like, let me take a look at that tech sheet. Opponent gives you the tech sheet, right? Because it's all open knowledge in the game, unless it's a specific mission. And you're like, there must be a misprint. That's crazy. How do they pack in all these short-range missiles? It's the same thing with this tank. Medium lasers can take you very, very quickly by surprise. They really can. If you get hit by a grouping of them in one turn, and it doesn't necessarily have to be from one mech or one tank, but if I have a lance, kind of a medium range, short range striker lance, where I've got 6, 7, 8, 10 medium lasers spread across a lance, and they're all focusing on one target, that takes you by surprise, because one medium laser in itself, not that we want to get hit by anything, you're like, all right, I could take it. Even a light mech is like, well, I could probably take it, then I'll run away. So we tend to discount them a little bit when they appear in bunches. You get to that moment, and now all of a sudden, a bunch of them are hitting you. And that takes you by surprise. So sometimes this projection is anticipation with like a long-range missile pack or an autocannon 20, where it's projecting that out. And other times, it kind of takes you by surprise. So these reference points as a mech commander, I'm looking for you to get in there as a mech warrior, roll the dice, do some damage. But I'm also tactically looking to affect the battlefield in some way. I'm looking to tactically navigate the battlefield some way. Projection of power, projection of opportunity. How does that play out? How does that work out? Another example of possible projection. We're looking at this. I regularly take Karnovs. Usually, my Karnovs are transporting infantry units. I'll take maybe 2 to 3 to 4 Karnovs and just load them up with infantry, and we're going to go occupy key positions and do spotting for long-range and direct fire, artillery, all that type of stuff. I want to get the most out of my miniature collection. So occasionally, just for the lulls, it's low battle value buy-in, ultimate lulls, I will take the variant that mounts one autocannon 20. So we've got this Karnov, it's approaching, it's coming in low, bay doors open, this giant cannon just drops out, and I've got my autocannon 20. It's very fast, it's very low battle value. And in terms of elevation and delivery, the projection will be, if I take 3 or 4 of these, one is just kind of a one-off, but if I take 3 or 4 of these, the projection of power, putting aside for a moment, optimally, yes, I probably am better off spending that battle value in other areas, or maybe looking for hover tanks, looking at something with a little bit more resiliency other than it just gets hit and it blows up. I agree with all that. I'm taking it because I've got the miniatures for the lulls, but putting that aside for a moment, within that framework, if I take 4 of these and I park them on the table behind a tall building, an airfield, some sort of level 3 where they're hidden. I've completely have them hidden from you. There's no elevation where you can shoot at them. You can't draw a line of sight, and I've flushed you further that they really can't be hit with indirect fire. But you're aware of them because, again, most missions you're aware of the units where they are. You're aware they're on the table. As you approach out of your deployment zone, you get to midfield, we're engaging. I can have those Karnovs take off, fly really high, and literally drop in behind you for that rear armor autocannon 20 shot. Now, maybe you've got some air support. Maybe you've got some other elements. Let's put that aside for a moment because we're just giving a kind of very focused best case scenario of projection of power. You've got to keep those 3-4 Karnovs in mind. They're sitting there. They're powered up. They're just waiting for the order to fly out. As you get closer, you're calculating, well, if he goes up and he goes out and he goes down 2 turns, what's happening here? If he strafes, he can get that. It's a projection of power. We won't know as soon as I take off. Yeah, your rifleman or your blackjack just lights me up, just crash, I miss. Any of those things, I mean, it is Battletech, can happen. But if I can occupy your mind with a projection of power, if I can distract you as a mech commander versus a mech warrior in that moment, if I can give you 3 or 4 or 5 little things to track in the course of the game, right? As a mech commander, you've got your mission. You're trying to move it forward. You're trying to do these different things. If I can have, I've got my mission and my main projection of units with my 2 lances, but if I have 4 or 5 little other things going on, especially if they're low battle value things to distract, to occupy your thoughts that you have to track, you can be in your mobile HQ with your projections and holograms and vids and everything. You still got to kind of take that into account. You still got to figure those things. So in looking at weapons platforms for the mech, yes, absolutely, it's about damage, but it's also about projection of opportunity, projection of force, and the impact on the mech commander, what they need to be aware of, or the possibilities of it. Making that distinction, because in Battletech, sometimes you're a mech warrior, and other times you're a mech commander, and being able to shift back and forth tactically and operationally between those two.